glass plates randomly exploding, filament spools falling apart, and trouble in Prusa land. All this and more, PrintFix Friday, episode 27. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to the channel and the PrintFix Friday series. If you are new here, make sure to leave a like and get subscribed. Every week here on the 3D Musketeers YouTube channel, we go through print fails and we look at fixing them. And if you want to submit your failures to either get some help or just show off how bad things have gotten sometimes, you can always email us or you can use the hashtags PrintFix, where we will be able to take a look at your failures. You can tag us on all the social medias so we can go ahead and find it. Inside, we've got a lot of really great fails for you, and this is more of a hardware fail than a print fail itself. And I'm really enjoying this because it's not often we get to look at printer fails as much as we normally do. We're gonna start off with an Ender 3 V2 whose glass plate looks like it was thrown off of Hell in a Cell in 1998, plummeting 30 feet through an announcer's table and shattered when it hit the table. We then move into Joel telling in his difficult relationship with a particular filament spool. That is, sad. Some F's in the chat will be required. At that, we look over at abused Ender 3s at Microcenter. While I love Microcenter, this does kinda suck. Hopefully there are good ways to fix it. We then move into a Creality CR10 V3 with some cooling problems, but I think there's a little more to it than just cooling alone. And finally, we end with another Prusa failure with filament stuck all the way in the heat break of the printer. These are some really great fails. I hope you guys will take a look at them. Of course, it's all chaptered out, so you can skip around as you feel needed. Just like you're probably going to skip this segue to our sponsor, 3D Musketeers. We know that print fails suck here at 3D Musketeers. That's why we have 37 printers now to ensure that when fails do happen, I can just start it on another printer and not worry about it until another day. You may not have that opportunity, but we do here at 3DM, and that means we can help you with your print fails. If you are dealing with print failures, make sure to shoot us an email, youtube@3dmusketeers.com, and we will do everything in our power to help you fail a little bit less. And in the event that, well, it's going to take too long, parts aren't going to get there in time, and you're on a time budget, you can have us take over that printing for you. We have experts where myself, I have well over a decade of experience in this industry to help you make awesome every single day. And if you want to help out the efforts that we do here on the channel, because it's definitely a loss leader for the company, you can do so by supporting us over at Patreon. Kick a couple of bucks into that creator fund, or you can join YouTube channel members by clicking the join button right below me next to the subscribe and like buttons, which you should be hitting as well. But enough of me, let's get into fixing those fails. Ender 3 V2, after being left overnight to print a PETG part. What the fuck happened? Oh, there are reasons why we advocate for tempered glass beds, but there are also reasons why tempered glass beds really suck. This is one of them. Thankfully, they had a tempered glass plate on here because the plate straight up exploded. So what happened here? Thermal shock is likely to blame. From what or why, I do not know. It does not immediately appear to me, especially if it was left running overnight, that something would cause this, right? They've got an upgraded cooler on there, I think. Is that a... Oh, that's a Hermera. Maybe. Maybe. It's a direct drive extruder on an Ender 3 V2 with an upgraded cooler, which could potentially cause issues. But I don't think you're going to thermal shock a plate this bad. So let's back up and talk about what happened. Something either dropped and fell on the plate and caused a point load and caused it to fail, or it had a thermal shock, or it's just like, I'm gonna head out. I mean, there's really not much else that goes on here. A tempered glass is amazing because it doesn't turn into shards like a piece of plate glass would, which will break into maybe 5 or 6 pieces, potentially causing you to get cut. Tempered glass breaks into 1 billion pieces, requiring you to get the shop vac, or piss off the people you live with, by using the regular vacuum to clean up glass shards. I'm not looking at anybody specifically, but you know who you are. So how can you fix this? Well, you can't glue the pieces of glass back together. I would love to see a video of like a YouTuber like Mr. Beast. I will give the first person to put this piece of tempered glass back together $10,000. Jimmy would do something like that. I won't, and I'll tell you to get a new piece of glass. Now's actually the right time to be looking at other bed materials. Tempered glass, especially the carbonium bullshit that Creality uses. I've talked about it before. I don't like it. It's silicon carbide on your print bed, and I don't have to really explain to you guys that much to get you to understand that silicon carbide is sandpaper. And do you want sandpaper touching your nozzle? Exactly. I don't see any water that could drop. This is an IKEA lack enclosure for an Ender 3. And if it was water, you would absolutely see it because it's IKEA. It's made of paper and cardboard with grid infill. If you've ever opened up a lack end table, they have grid infill. But now's a great time to look at getting a flex plate, whether it's PEI, maybe you're going for a textured sheet like a Wham Bam flex plate. Code Musketeers for 10% off through April 31st of 2022. So if you want to get one, I can save you a couple of bucks. And I guess full disclosure, we make a little bit of money on that, but I'm just going to use it to buy more Wham Bam products. But I've been there before. I've done this back before we used tempered glass, when we were still using plate glass, when nobody really knew. I had a hot bed, and I sprayed it with cleaning solution, and it just went pop on me, and it broke into a few pieces. Maybe we're not getting the whole story, but given the fact that the print is very much failed, and hilariously, it's not a bed adhesion problem. Well, not part to bed adhesion problem, it's bed to printer adhesion problem, because actually the part was looking quite good. So yeah, just get a new bed. I know that sucks, and I don't think I've ever seen that one before, so I figure people might find it interesting. And I'm glad that I'm not the only one that agrees. Time for magnetic PEI bed. They say they've already ordered one, will be there tomorrow. Hope it's as good as everyone says it is. They had no problem with adhesion with the clean glass side of this glass bed. The prints would always stick like super glue. And I have to agree, PEI is the best thing to have ever happened to 3D printing in general. It makes, it works. It just works, like, it just works. We can go into the specifics about how PEI works if you guys want one time, but I feel like it might be a little bit beyond the scope of these videos. Let me know what your thoughts are down in those comments below. We move over to my buddy Joel. You all know Joel. If you know us, you know Joel. Joel Telling, the 3D printing nerd. We'll have links to his channel in the description if for some reason you haven't heard of Joel. I'm gonna go with Joel's been personally attacked. I can't say I've ever had this happen. I have never had this happen before. But here's my thought. It appears that this spool is just press fit together. Potentially, after moving it, setting it on a spool holder, it might have been a little bit loose. And when that happens, it can work itself apart, causing this failure. Now, this looks really bad, and for somebody like Joel, somebody like us, people that are professionals, this is it's a write-off. Just write it off, give it to somebody with more time than us. Because spending that amount of time to fix a failure like this is way more than just getting a new roll of filament. And it sucks because that does create a lot of waste, but maybe you can get lucky here. We only see a couple of coils that got problems. We could try to push the spool back together, kind of pull it till it gets taut, start cutting it until you can find the end, and you'll maybe save a fair bit of the spool, but yeah, that's a fail I've never seen either. It's why companies that use master spools or spools that are in pieces really need to do testing, because ultimately these spools are going to get abused. They're going to get thrown onto IKEA Veskin carts. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we'll link to the video up in the card, because that's actually a really great way to store filament. I can store 96 spools of filament behind me, and if I had more vertical space, I could fit quite a few more. But they get thrown around, and if you don't have storage like this, you're just kind of hucking it onto a shelf. Now, recently, Joel showed off his brand new filament storage system, the Rep Rack from Repcord, and I really want to do one, but I want to do one on the edges of the rails here on our shelves. I think that would be really cool. Let me know if you guys want us to do something like that. But in a professional atmosphere, it's time to just cut the spool, put it off to the side, deal with it later, and switch over before you start losing time. In failures like this, when you're doing stuff either for production, for video, for sale, whatever, when it is a business, your time is more valuable than the $20 roll of filament. Let somebody who's got the time do it. And if nobody has the time, put it off to the side. Maybe find someone that wants a free roll of filament but is willing to put in the hours. This one may not be as bad as it looks, but I know, at least for Joel, he decided that swapping it made a lot more sense. Definitely not a failure that I expected. And I know quite a few of us were the same way. And he just said, I heard a noise, came downstairs and saw this. I guess we could say if you buy spools that are made in pieces, make sure they don't come apart. If they're plastic spools, just super glue them together. But I feel like we as users and makers should be able to trust manufacturers. Somebody like David Randolph with their brand new cardboard spools from Printed Solid has talked about how they've put in rigorous hours worth of testing to make certain that the spools are not going to come apart under even reasonably heavy use. And we beat the hell out of the spools here, and I've never had one of Printed Solid's cardboard spools come apart unless I was deliberately trying to pull it apart, and even then is it very difficult. Now, maybe Joel got unlucky, who knows, but it's still an interesting fail, and I'm glad that he shared it. Can I get an F in the chat? Not just for Joel, but for this Ender 3, ladies and gentlemen. This individual went to Microcenter recently and saw one of the display printers in a sorry state. What do you think happened here? Users happened here. People that said, "Ooh, a knob, let's turn it." Clearly, this is an Ender 3. It does not have auto bed leveling. So this is from the nozzle grinding itself into the build plate in a spectacular way, might I add. I'm impressed. And this sucks because if you are a parent and you're looking to get your kid a 3D printer, this is not a good way to show things. It is very easy for Microcenter to just go and replace it, right? Just put a new plate on, put a new printer out, do something to get that printer out of there so it looks a little bit better. Now, maybe it happened overnight, maybe they don't care, maybe some person that runs this department's a complete and utter goof. I don't know what to tell you. How do you stop this from happening? This all deals with your positioning of your nozzle to your plate itself. If it is too close, it's going to squish in and cause pain. And if it's too far away, you're going to be printing a big old plate of mom's spaghetti. So what's the best way to deal with this? Well, a lot of people use the paper method. I prefer the feeler gauge method, but I think we're going to do a back to basics video all on tramming, which is leveling in multi dimensions, your 3D printer bed, because there are a few ways to do it, and I will probably end up being cheeky and put a Prusa out there and say, how do you level a bed on a Prusa? You click this button and you just let it do its thing. Anyways, but on a printer like this, you've got the 4 individual thumb screws that you want to basically move it until the nozzle is lightly contacting your feeler gauge or your paper, and that should get the job done. A lot of times people will say to home the printer and do it from there. I disagree. I will home the printer, go up my layer height, which is normally 0.2, and then I will go ahead and level to that. We've also been doing this long enough, and I've worked with printers without auto bed leveling for so long that I will just normally print a 1 layer thick, flat, square plate so that I can just manually level it on the fly. The other thing to keep an eye out for on something like this is if you are using an OG Ender 3, which is what this is, their aluminum beds are notorious for warping. Like, incredibly notorious, like Notorious B.I.G. levels of notorious. So if you do decide to replace the plate, it might be worthwhile to put a piece of tempered glass and then a flex plate. And I know what you're thinking, Grant, what if my glass plate explodes? Like this one did. Then you're just unlucky. I don't really know what else to tell you here. I've never had a glass plate explode on me during a print when it didn't somehow get wet. Thermal shock is normally what causes tempered glass to break. But if you've ever seen people try to punch out car windows before, and I'm not talking windshields, I'm talking side windows, you'll see tempered glass is really strong. Like it takes a point load to get through tempered glass. If you ever see like people in the movies punching out glass, that's not right. You definitely should not do that. Please don't try that at home. And so the glass is a lot stronger. But if you are putting a sticker on it, you can get away with plate glass because it's not going to cause a problem. And the nice thing is if you are putting a magnetic sticker on it and you go with tempered glass and it does shatter, it should get stuck to your magnetic sticker. So it shouldn't make a mess. Shouldn't. TM. But I would say on Ender 3s, that's a great upgrade to make. And I just got a couple of Ender 3 Pros that have seen some things in their life. One of them has closed loop stepper motors on it. We're going to do videos on those coming up. Just get subscribed if you want to see that kind of thing. And we're just going to go over what we believe are good upgrades for an Ender 3 on a budget. Because not everybody can throw a Revo Hermera, a Wham Bam flex plate, double Z axis, fully custom chamber, fully enclosed chamber with heater, filter, and all of that. But a lot of people don't want to end up spending $900 or more on a Prusa. And I get it. I get it. So that's why we're getting these printers, so we can see what does it really look like. Let me know down in those comments what kind of upgrades that you guys want to see, because we have some interesting upgrades. I definitely don't have generic tungsten carbide nozzles that I'm definitely not going to test. Get subscribed. I could use a little help. That's why I have a therapist. The poster needs some help. The print is really deformed on one side of the print, but not the other side. It's on my CR10V3 with a CR Touch and Creality firmware. I have a couple of ideas, but I'm hoping someone else has had this happen before and knows how to fix it. Beautiful on one side, but yeah, that other side is rough. Cooling. Your CR10V3 has a cooling duct that does not fully wrap around the hot end and only blows from one side. So on one side of your print is not being cooled adequately and rolling its edge up. This is really common on Creality printers, and why we recommend that one of the first things you do is print a better fan duct for them so that they can work better. When you have your hot end and your fan that are moving across your print bed just like this, and you're only blowing air from one side, as it moves to the other side, see, we have good cooling here, but along that outside edge, which is all the way on this side of the hot end, we have really bad cooling now, which is causing your warping, as we see. And this is interlayer warping. Now, you could look at lowering your temps, and I am seeing some over temp issues. We definitely have some stringing here, so I would absolutely be looking at over temp. Run a calibration temp tower just to verify. If you're wondering how to do that, we covered a little bit of it in our Super Slicer tutorial. We'll card to that video series so you can take a look, where Super Slicer can actually make the G-code for you so you don't have to work on Prusa printers. Soon to be rebranded, actually. Take a look at our rundown of our top 10 repositories as well if you want to see some alternatives to Thingiverse. You can actually download files that have all of the temperature changes coded right into the part itself to make life just a little bit easier on you. I would also be looking at your support generation as a whole. We have one little pillar of support that is probably not going to do a whole lot, if it even survives. We do have some clear stringiness in between the actual parts themselves. Now, fortunately, the photo's not all that clear, but you can definitely see some artifacts of retraction. Not enough retraction will cause it to ooze when it's doing its movement, and then that ooze will be deposited where it starts its retraction once again. This could also happen when it starts the retraction if your retraction is happening too slowly and you have back pressure that takes over. When you're dealing with a printer like a CR10V3 or an Ender 3, a printer with a Bowden tube, it is good to do a very quick retraction, but on your de-retraction, when you're pushing the filament back in, it is good to run it nice and slow, maybe 25 to 35 millimeters per second, so that you don't end up with too much back pressure and you let the filament reheat slowly. That is important if you want to maintain good extrusion throughout your system. Or you could just heat the hell out of it and run it to the nines. Ask the speedboat guys that like to do benchies in something like 5 minutes. It's still astounding to me that that's possible, but your benchies look like shit. I'm sorry. It's not cool. Ooh, I've just pissed off the entire Voron community, and I don't care. PLA stuck in the nozzle. I've been here before. This is a Prusa. We can actually see that it's Prusa because Prusa things. This really sucks. I've had this happen before. You've actually ended up getting your filament stuck so far in that it does not stick up outside of your hot end. So how do you fix this? Well, this way is not bad. You can, of course, you can screw everything apart. As we see here, they have removed the heat sink from the heat break and the heater block, and we can see the filament hanging out. But this is normally caused from heat creep. This is something that happens from time to time on Prusas. One of our Prusas has this problem, and we are going to be upgrading its fan soon. So if you want to see that, again, make sure you get subscribed and leave a like. Come on, it helps us creators grow. But there are only a few ways to solve this, unfortunately. This is one of them. What you can do now is heat up the hot end slowly. Maybe 180 should be enough, and then just pull the PLA out. Or if you had left it fully together, you could have used a 1.5 millimeter hex key to drive it out. But be careful, because you can, of course, damage things on the machine itself. This has happened to us when we have mega jams, where we're not able to get our filament out of our hot end. And I've definitely not done this in the middle of a print to clear a jam and then to keep the print going without any noticeable problems. Nope, never done that before. But it has happened to us. I actually have on my desk a few examples of heat creep because I still keep them. Because I'm weird like that, apparently. This is a classic example of heat creep, where you end up with quite a bit of expansion inside of your nozzle, heater block, and heat break that causes a suction force where you have a really hard time getting it out. This is normally carried by the fact that the filament itself will grind inside of the extruder itself. You can see it on that silk blue right there, making it so it doesn't extrude properly. So how do you solve this? You can replace the fan. You can look at, is my material the problem? We know that some materials are harder to use than others. This is no surprise to anybody, nor is it a surprise to me. It's just sometimes surprising what materials are the problem. The fan on this printer looks a little bit old, or maybe the lighting is just rough and it looks like it's covered in dust. It's always good to dust your fan. Make sure your heatsink is free and clear of any foreign matter of any sorts, and you should be good to go. Another thing you can do is make sure that you're running a heater sock on your hot end. I know Prusa does not include them. I think it's kind of a no-brainer upgrade for these machines because it keeps your hot end looking a lot cleaner, and it's easier when you have to go out and change a nozzle over, so you're not dealing with gummed up plastic. It's just, well, the way that it was before you put the heater sock on it. We'll link to some down in the description for you so you can get some if you do so want. But I've seen this happen before. It sucks. The only real way that I'm aware of is to make sure that you have good thermal transfer between your heat break and your heat sink, as well as a fan that is working properly. This one was more of a mechanical failure episode, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it. We covered a few print fails, but I like some of the mechanical fails every now and then because, well, it's not just about print fails, mechanical fails can create print fails as well. Let me know down in those comments if you do like this series and what you want us to see covered next week. Every single week, we aggregate new models for us to take a look at so we can help you all fail a little bit less. That's all I have for you this week. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. Welcome, listeners, to the late night 3D Musketeers Print Fix Friday, where we unfuck your life. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video, and a massive thank you goes out to all of our Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members whose names are listed right next to me at the $5 tier and higher. If you want to join this elite group of Musketeers, you can do so at patreon.com/3dmusketeers, or you can click the join button right below this video. There's a lot of Patreon and YouTube channel member only content available, especially after the Polymate firecracker build that we just completed, the 3D printed speaker. That'll be the second video linked right below me, but the one directly below me is going to be the entire Print Fix Friday series. So if you're dealing with fails, we can help you suck just a little bit less. I will see you guys down in those comments and to the next one. Take care.